doesn't seem as if there is even the remotest chance of this war finishing this year.
General Sir Richard Barrons headed Joint Forces Command for 3 years until 2016. He says Russia's recent drone strikes on Kyiv and Mykolaiv were intended to dent Ukraine's morale, but won't succeed.
These attacks are not about territory. These attacks are about trying to deplete the will of the Ukrainian people to keep fighting. And the fact is, there is no sign of that happening. And we should keep the volume of attacks in perspective. They're obviously very frightening if they occur where you are, but these drones that appear to have been used today, produced by Iran, they carry a warhead of about 88 pounds, which is roughly the same as a large artillery shell. They have a very long range, about 2,500 kilometers, so much longer range than an artillery gun. But if 5 of these turn up over a city of 3 million people, very frightening and deadly for the people who are on the receiving end of them, but they're not going to stop a city or change the way Ukraine thinks about this war.
With winter approaching, the general says the war in Ukraine is entering a new phase.
Just the shorter daylight hours makes things like using many drones harder, unless they've got very good night vision capability. It makes movement harder. And then it gets wet, so trucks don't move well off roads, and then even tanks will struggle in some places. And then it gets cold, and everything becomes harder when you are living in the field like that. And the winners in that setting are the ones that have the stronger morale. That is clearly Ukraine. The ones that have the right equipment, and Ukraine understands as well as anybody else what warm weather clothing is and how to maintain the supply of that. And then there's simply training and the careful management of people. And we should remember that Ukrainian forces are fighting for their country in their own country. So their logistics have to be easier than Russian troops, which in many cases are at the end of quite long lines of communication.
General Barrons says it's vital that Ukraine is given more Western air defence systems.
And what we're seeing now as Russia puts more attention onto the civilian population and the power infrastructure and things like that is the need to really ramp up the air and missile defense of the main urban areas, which is a really major task. And some of that air defense needs to be really sophisticated, like the NASAM system, which is the same system that protects the White House in the US. And other bits of this air defense are going to be, frankly, much less sophisticated, but quite important. So new rifle sights that allow an infantry soldier to shoot down a drone supported by artificial intelligence at ranges of 200 or 300. These sorts of things are going to become much more commonplace. But protecting the population from drone and missile attacks is important to sustaining the will of that population to keep fighting.
The general says Russia's increasingly conscript army will pay a high price for Putin's war.
We should absolutely recognize that there are young Russians in their early 20s who have been pitched into a war which they don't really understand, don't support, are not equipped for, not trained for, and many of them will go home to their families in a body bag. That is President Putin's legacy to his country. And all the Ukrainians can keep doing is trying to speed this war up and bring it to an end successfully, because that might reduce the toll in the end. But this is just going to be hard and brutal. It's a war.
Ukraine's liberated 15% of the land Russia seized, but much more remains in Moscow's hands. Both sides now preparing for a long, hard winter as this war nears its 9th month. Simon Newton, Forces News. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.